This hunk of junk right here is the infamous Atari 5200 controller. And upon looking at it for the first time, you can kinda see why it's infamous. And as you can see, they were definitely trying to cash in on the success of the Intellivision and the ColecoVision. And as good as those systems are, even for the time, I'm pretty sure those systems established that this kind of controller design just doesn't work. I'm not here to rag on Atari though, so let's look at the positives real quick. This is actually a very advanced controller. For one, the joystick is analog, so you can move something slowly, or you can move it really fast. And you can actually use it for cursor-based games like Missile Command, or paddle games like Breakout. It also has 2 fire buttons on each side for lefties or righties, which I think is a really neat concept, and it's a concept that I really wish Atari would have revisited for their 7800 controller. It also has dedicated start, pause, and reset buttons, so for all you lazy schmucks who don't want to get off the couch and push the buttons on the console. And it also has a keypad, mainly for game selection, but there are also games out there that use more buttons than just these 2. And there's also games that use the full set, like the Real Sports series. You can also use these for Frogger as an alternative control scheme. Unfortunately, that's where the positives end. This controller actually does way more harm than good, and it's not just in terms of design, it's also in terms of functionality and feel too. This wouldn't be that much of a problem if it were easy to replace, but it has a proprietary 5200 plug on it, which means you're pretty much screwed. You're either playing with this thing or an expensive aftermarket controller, and believe me when I say that there were very few alternatives released for the system. This joystick that I mentioned earlier, it doesn't center, at least not very well. Mine sorta centers, but there are some out there that just don't center, period. The joystick only centers by this little rubber boot right here, which gets weaker over time, and it's made of a really soft rubber, so and the fact that the potentiometers and the joystick assembly itself are kinda tight, kinda contributes to the lack of centering. This makes games that require to go to center, like Berserk or Centipede, kinda hard to play, you'd have to constantly be adjusting. But mine does sorta center, so I don't think it'd be that much of a problem for me. And the buttons themselves are really rubbery and mushy, and I don't like the feeling of them. They just don't feel good. Especially these 3 right here, I do not like the bezel that they used here. It just doesn't feel good whenever I want to start a game or pause or reset. And worst of all, the build quality. This thing is built like a house of cards, so these things are notorious for breaking due to the cheap flex circuit on the inside, which oxidizes over time. The carbon pads used for the buttons are also kind of at fault too, those get dirty over time too. And you can have the innards replaced, and I actually want to do that in the future, because mine just doesn't work at all at the moment. And believe me when I say that I had tried cleaning this thing multiple times, and even the aluminum foil method. Nothing worked. So, I guess I just have no choice but to purchase a refurbishment kit. Or you can buy yourself another one that's already refurbished, but those are more expensive than the kit itself, so you're either doing all the work yourself, or saying goodbye to your wallet. It's a real shame that you have to be stuck with such an awful controller, because controller aside, I actually think the 5200 is actually a pretty decent system, because you do have some pretty good ports of arcade games for it. In fact, you have good games in general for it. Games like Bert, Galaxian, Missile Command, and especially Pac-Man, which is my favorite franchise ever. You're just stuck with a crappy controller to play them, and you're lucky if they even work at all. But if you don't want to spend money for a better controller, then this is pretty much all you got. You're just gonna have to make the best of it, because the system does have some pretty good games on it, for what it's worth.